I had won over the campus queen back in business school, and in our 5 years of marriage, I gave her a prestigious career, the finest luxuries, and a life in a mansion. Yet, at 3 in the morning, I watched on a security feed as she, dressed in Chanel, looped her arm through my brother Jerry's. They repeatedly acted out their sordid affair in my company's offices, elevators, and the parking garage. Even the 4 suspicious fund transfers over the last few months, totaling $200 million, were all her doing. By day, she would lie in my arms, reminding me to drink less coffee and take my fish oil, playing the part of the gentle, perfect wife. She was even planning to run away with her lover, to be with him for better or for worse. What she didn't know was that from the moment I saw the first suspicious transaction, I had started documenting everything. I recorded every secret meeting between her and Jerry, every money laundering transfer, and every whispered phone call. I even personally booked the flights and hotels for their planned elopement, just waiting for the day in court to tell her, in front of the press, that traitors to their marriage and their company will ultimately pay a price so high, it will bankrupt their entire family. It was 3 in the morning. I set down the financial statements I was holding and rubbed my stinging eyes. On the monitor, long strings of numbers still pulsed clearly. It was the 4th time in 3 months that a suspicious fund transfer had occurred. Each transaction was just under $5 million, seemingly insignificant on its own. But added up, the total had already surpassed $200 million. What was even more bizarre was that these transfers all happened in the dead of night. I pulled up the company's security system and located the video footage from the exact times of the transfers. Soon, my fingers froze over the keyboard. I felt as if I had been plunged into a cavern of ice. In the dimly lit hallway, my wife, Olivia, was walking alongside the company's biggest partner, Jerry Davis. She was dressed in a Chanel suit and high heels, her arm linked intimately with his as they walked toward her office. On that particular day, I was out of town on business. I fast-forwarded the video by an hour. The two of them emerged from the office, one after the other. Olivia's hair was slightly disheveled, and an unnatural flush colored her cheeks. Jerry reached out to straighten her collar. She feigned annoyance and playfully slapped his hand before letting herself fall gently into his embrace. Expressionless, I watched the entire clip. Then, I pulled up all the security footage from the last 2 years. Scene after intimate scene flashed before my eyes. Kisses in the office, flirting in the elevator, shadowy figures in the parking garage. They were completely brazen, as if they had long grown accustomed to this forbidden pleasure. And that woman was my wife, Olivia. The supposedly unimpeachable chief legal officer of my investment firm, time and again, while I was away, put on this little show with my business partner in the dead of night. I gripped the coffee mug in my hand so tightly that the scalding liquid spilled through my fingers, searing the back of my hand. But that physical pain was nothing compared to the wave of nausea churning in my gut. We had been married for 5 years. She was the campus queen I had pursued back in business school. Over the years, I had given her a prestigious career, the finest luxuries, and an incredible life. And in return, she gave me this betrayal so blatant. My phone suddenly buzzed. It was an iMessage from her. "Honey, are you working late at the office again? Should I have the housekeeper send you some food?" I stared at the message for a long time, until the screen went dark. Then I rose and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Through the glass, I could see my reflection. I was 35, dressed in a sharp suit with a perfectly knotted tie, the very picture of a successful man. But the look on my face was a silent, pathetic joke. I unlocked my phone again and typed a reply. "Don't worry about it. I'm on my way home now. It's only fair to answer a lie with a lie." I got home close to 4 in the morning. The entire mansion was dark, except for a single, warm yellow lamp glowing from the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. Olivia, wearing a silk robe, was propped up against the headboard, reading through some papers. When she saw me, she set them down and smiled. "You're so late. Is work that busy right now?" I changed into my pajamas and lay down beside her. "Yeah, a few projects are in a critical phase. It's been a little overwhelming. Don't push yourself too hard. You need to take care of your health," she said, reaching over to turn off the lamp. She gently caressed my cheek. I had my assistant order more deep-sea fish oil today. Make sure you start taking it tomorrow. In the darkness, listening to her soft, whispered words, I almost laughed. 4 or 5 years, she had been the perfect wife in everyone's eyes. Considerate, gentle, professionally successful, yet always attentive to our home. Everyone around me envied me for marrying a woman like her. But now I understood that it was all just an elaborate, gentle trap she had set. I rolled over and pulled her into my arms. She leaned against my chest obediently and sighed contentedly. Honey, you smell completely of coffee. She wrinkled her nose. You drank too much again, didn't you? It's so bad for your stomach. You never listen. I said nothing, only tightening my grip. She must have thought I was being unusually clingy as she chuckled and patted my back. But all I could think was whether, just a few hours ago, she had been nestled in Jerry's arms just like this, whispering the same sweet nothings in that same gentle voice. In the deep of the night, we lay there in an embrace. She fell asleep quickly, her breathing even and deep, while I was more wide awake than I had ever been. The next morning, I used an early company meeting as an excuse to skip breakfast with her. The moment I was in the car, I called my private investigator. He was a guy I'd worked with for years, someone who specialized in digging up dirt on my rivals and corporate enemies. I need a full report on Olivia Anderson and Jerry Davis, I said. All their interactions, communication logs, meeting details, and any financial exchanges. No problem, he said, pausing for a moment. Boss, how far back do you want me to go? I pressed my temples. 2 years. No, start 3 years back. I need to know exactly when this started. After hanging up, I opened the stack of files I brought home last night. It was the data I'd had the finance department pull together for me separately. On the surface, all the data looked perfectly normal. But when I pieced together several of the cross-border transactions and scrutinized them, a shocking truth emerged. Jerry's company was secretly acquiring my shares, bit by bit. And the person masterminding the entire operation was Olivia. As chief legal officer, she was in the perfect position to quietly clear every legal hurdle for Jerry, allowing his takeover to proceed undetected. I let out a cold laugh. No wonder Jerry had been so chummy with me for the past 2 years, always calling me buddy to my face. Behind my back, he wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was trying to swallow my company whole. And Olivia, the woman I trusted more than anyone, had become his most valuable accomplice. When I got to the office, I first scheduled a meeting with a few key board members. It was a project check-in that looked official but contained nothing of substance. As I was walking back to my own office, I saw Olivia emerging from the break room with 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She looked a little surprised to see me. You haven't eaten breakfast, have you? I just brewed some coffee. I stared at her familiar, smiling face, but my mind was flooded with images from the security footage. Had she served Jerry coffee with that same tender look? No, thank you. I have to step out in a little while, I said, forcing a smile. By the way, is Jerry stopping by today? He is. He scheduled a meeting for 3 o'clock, she said, glancing at her watch. I prepare a new proposal for him. We can review it together then. I nodded and turned to walk into my office. The moment the door clicked shut, the smile disappeared from my face. I turned on my computer and pulled up the recent financial statements for Jerry's company. It didn't take long to find several glaring inconsistencies. The guy had recently made a fortune on the stock market, and the funds he was using to acquire my company's shares came from a highly questionable source. I buzzed my intercom and called for Michael Johnson, the vice president. He was a man I had personally promoted, and his loyalty to me was absolute. I need you to investigate the source of Jerry's recent funding, I said, handing him a folder. Focus on these large transfers. I want to know where every single dollar came from. After he left, I pulled up Olivia's personnel file. As chief legal officer, she had handled countless important contracts over the past few years. Thinking back, Jerry's incredible run of success over the last 2 years was likely, in large part, thanks to her maneuvering behind the scenes. I thought to myself with cold cynicism, "Darling, you've really gone above and beyond for someone else's benefit." My phone buzzed. It was the private investigator with his preliminary report. I opened the attachment, and the first image that filled the screen was a photo taken inside a hotel suite. In the photo, Olivia was kneeling on the carpet, her head tilted back to kiss Jerry. The picture was so sharp I could see the look of pure ecstasy on her face. A timestamp in the corner indicated the photo was taken 2 years and 3 months ago. We hadn't even been married for 3 years at that point. I slammed my phone face down on the desk, closed my eyes, and took a deep breath. When I opened them again, a cold calm had settled over me. Since you both love to act so much, I'll play along until the very end. But I'm afraid the finale of this little drama won't be the one you're hoping for. At precisely 3 o'clock, Jerry arrived at the office. He was dressed to the nines in a tailored suit, looking sharp and polished, that usual polite smile fixed on his face. The moment he walked in, he greeted me with a warm hug. "Old friend, it's been too long." "It has," I said, forcing a smile. "I think the last time was on a golf course." "That's right. That was a great game. We should play again soon," he said, settling into a chair as if he owned the place and loosening his tie. "Absolutely." Any time, I nodded. Just then, Olivia walked in carrying a stack of files. She gave us both a brief nod and took a seat at the conference table. "Jerry, this is the latest partnership proposal we've drafted," she said, handing a copy to each of us. "Please take a look and let us know if you have any suggestions for adjustments." I pretended to be engrossed in the document, but my eyes darted over the top of the pages. In my peripheral vision, I could see the way Jerry was looking at her, a burning intensity in his gaze that made me sick. Olivia kept her expression perfectly professional, as if she hadn't noticed a thing. But as she turned to a specific page, I saw her fingertips tremble slightly. The meeting dragged on for nearly 2 hours. We covered everything from project timelines to future strategies. On the surface, it looked like a productive discussion for a vital partnership. As we were wrapping up, I mentioned casually, "By the way, I noticed a few irregularities in the company's cash flow recently. I'll need the legal department to look into it." Olivia flinched for a fraction of a second before recovering her composure. "Of course. I'll handle it," she said. "I will have my team investigate it thoroughly." "We appreciate you handling that, Director Anderson," Jerry added with a smile. "But with your skills, I'm sure you'll get to the bottom of it in no time." I watched their composed, casual exchange and laughed inwardly. So professional to my face, yet so filthy behind my back. I wondered how much longer they could keep up the charade. After they left, I pulled up the hallway security camera. On the screen, Olivia stood at the far end of the corridor, her voice a hushed whisper into her phone. "I think he's getting suspicious." "I know," a voice replied. "Don't panic. I'll take care of it." I switched off the monitor and walked to the window. From that vantage point, I could see the entire city skyline stretching out before me. For years, I had been a force to be reckoned with in the business world, yet I never realized the woman sleeping next to me had sold me out completely. "Fine. If you want to play games, let's play for higher stakes. We'll see who is more ruthless and whose revenge is more lethal." That night, I deliberately canceled a dinner engagement and, for the first time in a long while, came home early. Olivia was busy in the kitchen and was visibly startled when I walked in. "What are you doing home so early?" "I missed you," I said, walking up behind her and wrapping my arms around her waist. I leaned in and whispered, "All through that meeting today, I couldn't stop thinking about how good you looked in that dress." Her body tensed for a moment before she relaxed, acting as if nothing was wrong. Such sweet words. "You'll give yourself a cavity." I let her go and grabbed a beer from the fridge. As I drank, I watched her moving around the kitchen and said suddenly, "Have you lost weight recently?" "Have I?" She glanced back at me. "Probably just for being so busy at work." I said, taking a sip of beer, my words laced with double meaning. "Things have certainly been eventful at the office." She paused again, then went back to chopping vegetables, feigning nonchalance. "It's nothing. It's just part of the job." I set down my beer and moved behind her. "Need any help?" "No, it's fine. Go relax in the living room and watch some TV," she said with a smile. "Dinner will be ready soon." I glanced up at the reflective surface of a kitchen cabinet, which caught her profile. She looked so gentle, so devoted, without a trace of guilt. For 5 years, she had played the part of the perfect wife for me. If I hadn't seen those videos with my own eyes, I never would have believed her capable of such a thing. At dinner, she put a piece of sweet and sour pork in my bowl. "Try it," she said. "I made it just the way you like." I took a bite. It was the same familiar flavor. This sweet and sour pork had always been my favorite dish, and she always took special care when making it. But now all I could taste was bitterness. "So, how is the investigation into that issue from this afternoon?" I asked casually. Olivia was ladling soup for me, and her hand shook so badly she nearly spilled it. "I've already assigned people to review it," she said. "I'll let you know the moment I have an answer." "No hurry," I replied, smiling as I took the bowl from her. "I trust you." She visibly relaxed, but I could still see a fleeting shadow of anxiety in her eyes. "I won't betray your trust," she said. After dinner, I went to my study to work. A short while later, my phone buzzed. It was the second report from my private investigator. I opened it. It was filled with detailed records of Olivia and Jerry's meetings, hotels, private clubs, even photos from several trips they'd taken abroad together. Before and after each of these meetings, a significant sum of money was transferred into one of Olivia's private accounts. I stared at the pictures. Jerry, with his arm around her waist, kissing her in front of a five-star hotel's panoramic window. Olivia, in a bikini on a lounge chair, letting him lean down to kiss her cheek. The photos spanned more than 2 years, with new entries appearing almost every month. The transaction records were even more sickening. It started with payments of a few $1,000s, but soon escalated to single transfers of hundreds of thousands. My wife, in the process of selling her body and soul, had apparently learned how to incrementally raise her price. "Honey," she said, knocking softly on the study door, "I made you some ginseng tea." I quickly closed the document and said as casually as I could, "Come on in." She walked in, set the tea beside me, and wrapped her arms around my neck from behind. "Working late again. You really don't know how to take care of yourself." I took her hands in mine, slowly caressing her palms. "As long as I have you to worry about me, that's enough." She rested her chin on my shoulder and laughed softly. "You always know just what to say." I suddenly spun my chair around, pulling her into my lap. In the dim light of the study, I stared at her face and asked, "Olivia, do you love me?" She froze for a second, then leaned in to kiss me. "Of course I love you. Why else would I have married you?" I held her, inhaling her familiar perfume, but my stomach was churning. Just this afternoon, she had been with Jerry in a hotel room. The scent of his presence probably hadn't even faded from her skin, and here she was in my bed. I wondered what this intimacy even meant to her anymore. The following day, I made a point of having lunch with my CFO. "I've noticed some unusual fund movements in the company accounts recently," I told him. "I need you to monitor them for me." I handed him a cigar, "Especially the cross-border transfers." He took it but hesitated. "Should I clear this with Director Anderson first?" "You will not involve Olivia." I cut him off. "You report directly to me, and only to me." I lit my cigar and took a long drag. "And another thing, this stays between us. I don't want anyone else knowing." After lunch, as I was walking through the lobby back at the office, I ran right into Jerry stepping out of the elevator. "Hey, Lucas, you're back," he said with a grin. "I was just reviewing some project details with Olivia." "Thanks for the help, Jerry," I said with a manufactured smile. "Don't mention it," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "How about dinner tonight?" "I can't tonight. I have a client dinner," I lied. "All right, some other time then." As I watched him walk away, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Michael Johnson. "Give me Jerry's recent itinerary." He replied almost instantly. "Already on it. Should have something for you in the next day or two." I put my phone away, walked into my office, and pulled up Olivia's file on my computer. Her resume was pristine. A graduate of a top-tier law school, a classic overachiever, she had won major cases even as an intern. After graduation, she joined a renowned firm and made partner in just 2 years. Anyone looking at a resume like that would see a limitless future and feel a pang of envy. It was a shame all that talent had been so spectacularly misplaced. Next, I reviewed every project she had managed over the past 2 years. As I suspected, she had personally overseen nearly every single collaboration involving Jerry Davis. At every critical milestone, she found a way to create an advantage for him. No wonder he'd been able to quietly gobble up so many of my company's shares in just 2 years. Just then, the intercom buzzed. It was Michael Johnson. "Boss, I have something I need to report to you in person." "Come in," I said. He walked in, his expression grim, carrying a stack of documents. "I followed Jerry's money trail," he said. "Most of it traces back to a handful of offshore shell corporations." I took the files and scanned them, my expression growing darker with every page. These offshore companies were all intricately connected to our main business rivals. And each time one of those corporations received an influx of cash, Jerry would immediately purchase another block of our company's stock. It meant he hadn't just betrayed me. He was colluding with my enemies in a joint effort to take my company down. "Keep digging," I ordered, spreading the files across my desk. "I want the ownership structure of these offshore entities. I want to know every single person involved." After Michael left, I pulled up Olivia's work calendar. Unsurprisingly, she had been making frequent visits to the offices of several of our competitors. The appointments were logged as business negotiations, but it was clear she was acting as Jerry's go-between. No wonder he'd managed to acquire so many shares so quietly. Just then, a notification popped up on my screen. It was a recording of the phone call between Olivia and Jerry from the previous night. "He told finance to audit the accounts," Olivia's voice said. "We need to be careful." "Relax," Jerry's voice answered. "I've already taken care of it. They won't find anything in the paperwork. We just need to hold out for a few more months. Once the takeover is complete, this will all be over. I'll take you away from all this, and you'll never have to answer to anyone again." I pressed pause. So that was their plan. If they were willing to take it this far, then I had no reason to hold back any longer. When I returned home that night, Olivia was already asleep. I slipped into bed quietly, but the movement seemed to stir her. She rolled over and mumbled, "Honey, you're home." "Yeah, go back to sleep," I whispered, tucking the covers around her. She nestled closer to me and was sound asleep again in moments. Looking at her peaceful face, I found my mind drifting back to when we first met. Back then, she was just an intern at a law firm, and I had only recently taken over my family's corporation, the Montgomery Group. We met for the first time at a corporate gala. She was wearing a simple black dress and standing alone in a corner, lost in thought. I walked over with a glass of wine and offered her some. She just smiled and shook her head. "No, thank you. I have to get back to the office later." It was such a simple, ordinary thing to say, but I was captivated instantly. Pursuing her wasn't easy, but I used every trick in the book and never once considered giving up. Finally, after a year, she accepted my proposal. Our married life seemed perfect. Her career flourished, but she never neglected our home. We rarely argued. I get irritable when I'm busy with work, but she would always just laugh it off, choosing to be patient and understanding. To the outside world, we were the perfect couple. Everyone envied me for having married such a capable and devoted wife. But now I finally understood it was all a carefully constructed facade. Her gentleness, her thoughtfulness, her every seemingly perfect action, it was all a lie. I sat up in bed, went to my study, and turned on the computer. I pulled up Jerry's latest travel schedule. In 3 days, he was flying to the United States to negotiate a merger. According to my investigator's report, he had already booked 2 plane tickets and 1 hotel suite. It was obvious he planned to take Olivia with him. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 2 a.m. sharp. I picked up my phone and called Michael Johnson. "Pack a bag," I said. "The day after tomorrow, you're flying with me to the States." After hanging up, I sent another message to my investigator. "I want eyes on Olivia and Jerry during this U.S. trip. They're bound to slip up." I put down my phone and walked to the window. The city lights glittered in the dark. "Olivia, you think this is the perfect betrayal. Just you wait. We'll see who ends up losing more." The next morning, I went to the office as usual. Olivia was already waiting for me in the conference room. When she saw me walk in, she stood up and handed me a file. "Honey, here is the financial report that the accounting department prepared yesterday. Please take a look." I took it and flipped through a few pages. It was all fabricated, a set of cooked books she had carefully prepared. Every transaction had been manipulated to look seamless. If I hadn't already known the truth, I might have never seen the deception. "Thank you for your hard work," I said, closing the folder with a smile. I looked up at her. "You seem tired lately, a little pale." She was clearly taken aback and subconsciously touched her cheek. "Am I? I guess I haven't been sleeping well. I have a business trip to the U.S. in 2 days to work on a deal," I said, as if the thought just occurred to me. "Why don't you come with me? We could treat it like a mini vacation." A flash of panic crossed her face. "I really shouldn't. There's too much work to handle at the office." I didn't push it. "Well, make sure you get some rest at home, then." After the meeting, I returned to my office. Just as I expected, there was a new text on my phone. "Trip in 2 days is confirmed. Everything is going according to plan." It was from Jerry. On the surface, he was talking about the merger, but in reality, he was signaling to my wife that their little elopement was a go. I sneered and deleted the text. At lunchtime, Olivia knocked on my door. "Want to grab lunch together?" "I can't. I have a client meeting," I said, gathering some papers from my desk. "You should go ahead without me." She nodded and turned to leave. "Wait," I called after her. "Come home early tonight," I said, looking directly at her. "I'd like to have dinner with you." She smiled. "Okay, I'll try to get back as early as I can." The moment she was gone, I pulled up the security feed. Sure enough, she went straight to the parking garage and got into Jerry's car. She must have thought my upcoming business trip gave her free rein to be more reckless. I had them followed, and it wasn't long before the photos started coming in. They were in a private room at an upscale restaurant. Olivia was sitting right on Jerry's lap as they toasted with their glasses. Jerry must have whispered something in her ear because she burst out laughing, throwing her head back before falling completely into his embrace. I scrolled through the photos, my face a blank mask. Then I opened my safe and took out a document. It was the divorce agreement I'd had my lawyer draw up, the one that detailed every one of Olivia's betrayals. If I chose to, I could release this document and not only destroy her reputation, but also subject her to legal consequences. I had a copy sent to be notarized and stored. I might not need it yet, but it was wise to have every contingency covered. When I got home that evening, Olivia was already in the kitchen, just as I'd expected. She smiled when I walked in. "I made some of your favorite things for dinner." I walked over and put my arms around her from behind. "What's with the special treatment?" "Well, you're leaving on your trip," she said, turning to wrap her arms around my neck. "I wanted to give you a reason to miss home." I lowered my head and kissed her. She responded immediately. When the kiss ended, she gently pushed me back. "We should eat before everything gets cold." I stared into her eyes and suddenly asked, "Olivia, if one day I didn't come back, would you be sad?" She looked startled for a moment, then chided me with a laugh. "Don't say such things. Of course you'll come back." I looked her straight in the eye and said, enunciating every word, "I will absolutely be back." The next morning, I arrived at the airport right on time. Olivia had woken up early to see me off. Her eyes were a little red as she said goodbye. "Travel safe, and come home soon." I reached out and stroked her hair. "Don't worry, I'll be back before you know it." As I turned and walked toward the gate, I saw her out of the corner of my eye, already pulling out her phone and typing a quick message. She was probably telling Jerry that the prey was on the move. Before I boarded, Michael Johnson came up to me. "Everything is in place," he said. I nodded. "Good. Let's set in motion." After the plane took off, I closed my eyes, feigning sleep. Soon, a flight attendant came by with a service card and discreetly handed me a folder. It was the latest report from my investigator. Jerry and Olivia had arrived at the airport half an hour ago and were about to board a different flight to the U.S. I opened the file on my phone. It contained photos of them at the terminal. Olivia wore sunglasses and a mask, and Jerry was dressed casually. They looked just like any other couple heading off on vacation. It seemed their plan was to complete the merger in the States and then proceed directly with their little elopement. How naive. Did they really think they could just leave the country and escape the consequences? 10 hours later, our plane landed in New York. By the time we left the airport, night had fallen. Michael drove me to my hotel, briefing me on the way. Jerry and Olivia are booked at a different hotel. Do you want me to leave them? I interrupted. We stick to the plan. He nodded and asked no more questions. Once at the hotel, I quickly settled in and then headed straight to the headquarters of the acquiring firm. The negotiations went more smoothly than I had anticipated. They clearly hadn't expected me to show up in person. By the time the contracts were signed, it was already 9 p.m. I checked my phone and, sure enough, there were several messages from Olivia asking if I landed and why I wasn't picking up. I sent a quick reply, still in meetings. Then I had Jerry's location tracked. The investigator quickly sent back their coordinates. They were at a Michelin-starred restaurant nearby. I checked the time and said to Michael, "Get ready." It's time we gave them a little surprise. Half an hour later, I stood outside that very restaurant, peering in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Olivia was wearing a backless, champagne-colored gown, her face lit up with a brilliant smile. Jerry kept leaning in to whisper in her ear, making her laugh so hard she threw her head back. They looked for all the world like a couple madly in love. I took out my phone and recorded the entire scene. Then I turned, walked away, and sent a single text to Michael Johnson. Proceed as planned. It was late when I got back to the hotel. I stood by the window with a drink, waiting. On the table, my phone screen lit up again and again with a stream of concerned messages from Olivia. "Honey, are you asleep? Why aren't you answering my calls? Are you exhausted? Don't forget to eat." I stared coldly at the words that were meant to seem so gentle and caring. Just then my phone buzzed. It was Michael. "Boss, it's done." I set down my glass. "You got the video?" "We got everything," he confirmed. Jerry's entire negotiation with the woman. We didn't miss a thing. After hanging up, I opened the video he'd sent. It showed Jerry laughing with a blonde woman. They were speaking in hushed tones, the atmosphere thick with intimacy. Meanwhile, in a nearby booth, Olivia was clutching a wine glass, her face a mask of pale fury. I knew exactly why she was so angry. The blonde woman was the CFO of the firm Jerry was trying to acquire, the key player in the deal. To Jerry, meeting with her behind Olivia's back was just a necessary step to close a major business transaction. But in Olivia's eyes, it was a blatant betrayal, because she had foolishly believed that she was the one he truly loved. She thought he was going to sweep her off her feet for a romantic escape. She had no idea that, to him, she was just another pawn in his game against me. In the world of business, profit always comes first. Even something like true love is just another bargaining chip to be used when closing a deal. In the video, Olivia finally snapped. She stormed over to Jerry's table and threw a glass of red wine in his face. Jerry's expression soured instantly. He shot up, grabbing her wrist in a death grip, looking like he was about to strike her. Olivia struggled, but he pinned her against the wall, immobilizing her. The video cut out. I watched the black screen and smiled faintly. I sent a text to my investigator. "Have you confirmed which hotel they're in?" The reply came back quickly. "The Pacific Hotel, room 1805. I checked my watch. It was 1 a.m. They were probably back in their room by now. I wondered if they were still fighting or if they had already made up as if nothing happened. It didn't matter. Such trivial details were no longer important. I picked up my phone and called Michael. "Tomorrow," I said, "we move forward as planned." The next morning, I arrived promptly at the acquisition firm's headquarters. Across the negotiating table, Jerry's face was a thundercloud. He obviously hadn't expected me to show up. He certainly hadn't expected me to arrive with a completely new acquisition proposal. "What is this?" he hissed, glaring at me. "We finalized the terms yesterday." "My apologies," I said with a thin smile. "I had a change of heart." He shot to his feet. He started, but I held up a hand, signaling for Michael to distribute my new proposal to everyone at the table. "This proposal," I announced, "contains our most recent financial reports and a detailed market analysis. I trust you'll all see that this new offer is made in much better faith." The other firm's CFO, the same blonde from the restaurant, quickly scanned the documents, her eyes lighting up. "Based on these numbers and terms, this proposal is indeed far more advantageous." Jerry's face turned ashen. "But yesterday you already agreed," he stammered. "Oh, about that. The blonde executive cut him off with a bright smile. "We're sorry, Jerry, but we find Mr. Miller's new proposal to be a much better fit for us." Jerry collapsed back into his chair, the color draining from his face. He knew exactly what her words meant. The takeover he had been orchestrating for years had just completely and utterly failed. All that money funneled from our rivals through those offshore accounts was now gone, completely wasted. I looked at his defeated posture and smiled to myself. This was only the beginning. After the meeting concluded, I received a text from Olivia. "Honey, are you busy? I miss you." So, after her fight with Jerry last night, she suddenly remembered she had a husband. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the audio recording from the restaurant last night. It was Jerry's voice. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he was yelling. "She's a key executive in their firm. You're going to blow this whole deal. You were all over her. Was I just supposed to sit there and watch?" Olivia's voice shot back. "Olivia, don't forget the plan. As soon as this deal closes and I get the money, I'm taking you away from here. Until then, you need to be good and stay out of my way." The recording ended. I closed my phone, a cold resolve settling in my heart. It was time for the curtain to fall on this farce. Back at the hotel, I had Michael book me a flight home for that night. Before I left, my only instruction to him was, "You know what to do with what's left." "Don't worry, boss," he nodded. "It's all arranged." The red-eye landed back in Chicago just after midnight. I switched on my phone to find more than a dozen missed calls, all from Olivia. Her most recent text read, "Honey, when are you getting back? Should I come pick you up?" I ignored it and hailed a cab home. The mansion was dark, except for a single light in the master bedroom upstairs. I pushed the door open to find Olivia sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at her phone. The moment she saw me, she flew into my arms. "Why didn't you answer your phone?" I was worried sick. I let her cling to me for a moment before I asked quietly, "Did you enjoy your trip to New York?" Her body went rigid. She tried to force a calm tone. "What trip? I've been home this whole time." "Really?" I pushed her away, walked over to my computer, and brought up the screen. "Then what do you call this?" Displayed on the monitor were the intimate photos of her and Jerry at the restaurant, followed by the video of them embracing and kissing in the hotel lobby. The color drained from Olivia's face. I, she stammered. "Save your explanations," I sneered. "I'm well aware of how much fun you two were having." With a soft thud, her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the floor. "Honey, please listen to me. He tricked me, I was." "Tricked you into what?" I asked, punctuating every word. "Tricked you into embezzling funds. Tricked you into leaking corporate secrets? Or tricked you into his bed?" I stared at her, watching her face grow impossibly pale. "I know everything you've done for the past 2 years," I said, "including your little plan to run off to New York together." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with terror. You know everything?" "Why else?" I asked. "Do you think Jerry's big deal suddenly fell apart?" I looked down at her, my voice devoid of all emotion. "Did you really think he was serious about running away with you?" "No, that's not it," she mumbled, more to herself than to me. "He said he loved me. He said he would take me with him." "It seems you still don't have a clue." I cut her off. "He's been after my company for years. You were just a piece on his board." With that, I brought up the call logs between Jerry and our main competitors, playing the recordings of their discussions about taking over my company. As each segment of their plotting played out, Olivia's face became more and more ashen. "Listen closely," I said. "This is what your true love really thinks of you." Jerry's contemptuous voice filled the room. "Olivia? That stupid woman actually thinks I love her. The second I get controlling interest in that company, she's the first thing I'm getting rid of." Olivia crumpled to the floor, tears streaming down her face. "No," she sobbed. "That's not possible, it's not." I watched her break down with cold detachment and let the recording play. Jerry's voice dripped with scorn. "She acts like she's something special. She's just a pretty face who married one rich guy and is now trying to trade up for me. When you get down to it, how is she any different from the girls on the street?" "Stop!" Olivia screamed, covering her ears, her vision blurred with tears. Her voice trembled. "Please, just stop it. I'm begging you." I finally stopped the recording and knelt in front of her. "Do you realize now how pathetic this is?" I asked. "For a man who never loved you, you betrayed your husband, your marriage, and this home. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with desperation and panic. I am sorry. I know I was wrong. I really do. No, you don't. I cut her off with a bitter laugh. You're not sorry you betrayed me. You're just upset that you got played. If Jerry had actually taken you away to some foreign country, would you be here right now, apologizing to me? That's not true, she sobbed, grabbing at the cuff of my pants. I really am sorry. Please forgive me. I yanked my leg away. It's too late. In a few days, I'm calling a meeting of the shareholders, and I'm going to make all of this public, I told her. I have all the evidence of your collusion with Jerry. The embezzlement, the corporate espionage, everything. Her head snapped up, her face utterly white. You're going to send me to... What do you think? I said, crouching down to look into her horrified eyes. Any one of these crimes carries a sentence of several years in prison. Olivia collapsed completely, sobbing. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to. Then you'll do exactly as I say, I said, standing up. I pulled a document from my desk drawer. This is our divorce agreement. Sign it. She took the papers with a trembling hand. As she read the terms, the shaking intensified. This leaves me with nothing. I looked down on her. Compared to a prison sentence, isn't this merciful? The agreement was crystal clear. Upon divorce, she would leave with absolutely nothing. No claim to any company shares, no property, no assets. It also stipulated that she would be permanently barred from working in the finance and investment sectors. For a woman as career-driven as her, it was a professional death sentence. But she had no other choice. I watched, my heart a stone, as her trembling hand signed her name. This, I said, is the price of betrayal. The next day, I had the divorce agreement notarized. When I got home, Olivia looked like all the life had been drained from her. She was just curled up in a ball on the bed. As soon as I walked in, she looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Can you please give me one more chance? A chance? I let out a cold, sharp laugh. Did you ever think about giving me a chance when you were betraying me? She bit her lip, and fresh tears started to fall. Looking at her pathetic state, I almost found it funny. You know, I said, from the moment I found out you were cheating, I've been asking myself one question. She stared at me, dumbfounded. What did I ever do to you that was so wrong? I gave you this incredible life. I supported your career at every turn. I gave you every resource you ever asked for. So why did you do this to me? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Forget it. There's no point talking about it anymore, I said, turning to leave. The shareholders' meeting is next week. You'd better figure out how you're going to handle it. Wait, she suddenly cried out. Jerry, what about him? I paused at the door and looked back at her. What do you think? Shortly after I left the mansion, a message came from my investigator. Olivia had tried calling Jerry over a dozen times, but none of the calls went through. Reading the text, the corner of my mouth twitched into a smile. Jerry could barely save himself right now. He had no time to worry about her fate. And this was only the prelude. In a game of betrayal, someone always has to pay the price. I was going to make them understand the meaning of true despair. The next day, Jerry was arrested. The charges included embezzlement of corporate funds, illegal competitive practices, and misappropriation of assets. The list of offenses was long enough to put him away for up to 10 years. When the news broke, Olivia, who was sitting at the breakfast table, dropped her phone. It clattered to the floor. I was sipping my coffee and looked up at the sound. What's wrong? I asked. Does your heart ache for him? Her face was as white as a sheet, her hand trembling as she reached for her phone. You planned all of this, didn't you? Of course, I said, setting down my coffee cup. Did you really think I was some kind of idiot who was completely in the dark? She stared at me, tears streaming down her face. Then why didn't you do something sooner? Why wait until now? I was waiting for you to complete all of your good work, I said with a cold smile. It's much cleaner to catch you all in one go. She collapsed in her chair, her voice a raw whisper. You're ruthless. I'm ruthless. I laughed. And what were you? When you and Jerry were betraying me behind my back. I took out my phone and played a video. It showed Jerry in an interrogation room, eagerly pushing all the blame onto Olivia. It was all her, he was saying. She masterminded the whole thing. She seduced me. She told me what to do. Take a good look, I said, holding the phone out to her. There's your true love. Olivia stared at the video of Jerry's frantic, grotesque face, her body racked with tremors, her own face whiter than a sheet of paper. What's wrong? Can't stand the sight. I switched off the video, my voice calm. Don't worry. The main event is still to come. That afternoon, the police formally issued a summons for Olivia. When they took her away, she was in a complete state of shock. That evening, I got a message from my investigator. Olivia had confessed to everything in the interrogation room. She laid out every detail. How she used her position to help Jerry move money, how she stole corporate secrets for him. She told him everything. It seemed she was finally, truly afraid. I stood at my window and lit a cigar. The night outside was black as ink, but my reflection in the glass was chillingly clear. My revenge was only just beginning. The shareholders' meeting convened as scheduled. The boardroom was packed to capacity. Everyone was waiting for the drama to unfold. I walked to the podium, placed a thick file on it, and began. Today, I have an announcement to make. The projector screen lit up, displaying in stark detail everything Olivia and Jerry had done. Our former chief legal officer, Olivia Anderson, I began, repeatedly used her position to leak critical corporate secrets to outside parties. Jerry Davis then used that intelligence to secretly purchase company stock and orchestrate what would have been a hostile takeover. The evidence was all there, laid out with methodical precision. It was undeniable. The room erupted. One board member slammed his fist on the table. That treacherous woman. Another just shook his head and sighed. Lucas, you raised a viper in your own home. I scanned the faces in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, this is who they truly are, I said. The authorities are now involved, and I will be pursuing every available legal channel to protect the interests of this company and its shareholders. After the meeting, several shareholders crowded around me, offering their condolences and affirming their support. We're behind you, Lucas. Those two traitors must be punished to the fullest extent of the law. I responded with polite smiles, but inside, I was laughing at them. They were nothing but spectators, enjoying the show. If Jerry's plan had succeeded, they would have been the first to abandon me and side with him. When I got home that night, Olivia was gone. She hadn't even dared to face me, leaving only a note on the dining room table. Honey, I'm so sorry, it began. I know what I've done is unforgivable. I tore the letter into tiny pieces and threw in the trash. From the moment she chose betrayal, this house had ceased to be her home. I opened my safe and took out another file. It was the background report on Olivia's parents. Since she had proven so utterly devoid of gratitude, she couldn't blame me for pushing her to the absolute brink. The next day, Olivia's parents came to my home to beg for mercy. The two of them, well on in years, knelt before me, weeping and breathless. Please, her mother sobbed. Please have mercy on our Olivia. She's young. She was just confused. I looked at them, my face a mask of stone. Does being young give her an excuse to do whatever she wants? She knows she was wrong. Her mother pleaded, wiping away tears. Please, just this once, be the bigger person and let this go. The bigger person? I scoffed. I pulled a contract out of a drawer and threw it on the coffee table. Before you continue pleading for her, I suggest you look at this. It was a land deed. It showed in black and white that Olivia had used money I had given her to purchase several plots of land in her parents' names back in their hometown. She had then resold that same land to one of Jerry's shell companies for a price far exceeding its market value. What is this? Olivia's father asked, his hands trembling as he held the document. Your good daughter, I said slowly and clearly, took my money, conspired with another man, and then brazenly used your names to help him launder it. If this information were to become public, I said coldly, you two would be implicated as well. At that, their legs gave out, and they both collapsed to the floor. Mr. Anderson, I said, looking down at them, you have two choices. The first is that you all face the legal consequences together. The second is, what's the second choice? Mr. Anderson asked frantically. You sell that land to me for its assessed market value, and then you and your wife leave Chicago and never come back. Is there another way? He stammered. I let out a sharp, derisive laugh. If that land wasn't special, do you really think Jerry would have been interested in a few worthless plots in the middle of nowhere? It's because that area is the designated site for a new high-speed rail hub. Once it's built, the value of that land will increase 100-fold. Mr. Anderson's face went white. You knew all along. Of course, I said, standing to look down on them. I was the one who secured that project for the city. The old couple stared at each other, their eyes hollow with despair. Think it over carefully before you give me an answer, I said, walking to the door. You have 3 days. That night, Olivia called me. Please, she croaked, her voice raw. Leave my parents out of this. It was all my fault. Whatever you're going to do it to me. You? I cut her off. Do you really think you're worthy of my attention? The line was silent for a long moment. Remember this, I said slowly. You are nothing now. If you want to save your parents, you'll make them do as they're told. After I hung up, I checked the date. In 2 days, Jerry and Olivia would stand trial together. I opened my laptop and reviewed all the documents for the court case. It was time for the final act. On the day of the trial, the courthouse was mobbed with reporters. It was, after all, one of the biggest financial scandals in recent memory. A senior executive of a publicly traded company colluding with an outside partner to embezzle millions, commit corporate espionage, and plot a hostile takeover. The case was practically a textbook example of corporate crime. I walked through the gauntlet of cameras and microphones in a perfectly tailored suit, my eyes fixed straight ahead. Inside the courtroom, Jerry and Olivia were seated on opposite sides of the defendant's table. Jerry's suit was rumpled, and he looked gaunt and exhausted. When he saw me, he snarled through gritted teeth, "You're a real bastard, Miller." Olivia kept her head bowed, not daring to even look in my direction. A small smile played on my lips. "A bastard," I murmured. "Oh, we're only just getting started." The trial began, and the prosecution presented its mountain of evidence. Bank statements, call logs, every last detail of their conspiracy was laid bare for the court to see. Jerry finally lost his composure. He leapt to his feet, pointing a trembling finger at Olivia. "It was her," he shouted. "She seduced me. If she hadn't come on to me, I never would have." At that, Olivia finally looked up. "Jerry, how dare you?" she cried out. "You're the one who promised to take me. Order in the court," the judge commanded, banging his gavel. I watched dispassionately as they turned on each other. Their pathetic squabbling was nothing more than a desperate attempt to mitigate their own sentences. Finally, the judge called for a recess. As the bailiffs led Jerry away, he turned and screamed at me, "I'll see you in hell, Miller." Olivia remained silent, but I noticed her hands were clenched into fists, trembling slightly. The moment I stepped out of the courtroom, the reporters descended. "Mr. Miller, do you have any comment on your wife's betrayal?" one of them shouted. I stopped and looked directly into the cameras. "I only have one thing to say. Every betrayal has its price. Will you ever forgive Olivia?" another reporter asked. I smiled a thin, cold smile. Some mistakes, once made, can never be forgiven. That evening, at a press conference, I dropped my final bombshell. Montgomery Group was officially launching a new, multi-billion-dollar high-speed rail hub complex. The chosen location for this massive project was the very same area where Olivia's parents owned their land. I knew she would see the news, and I knew she would understand exactly what it meant. I was telling her that I hadn't just destroyed her future, I had destroyed her parents' escape route as well. Because the price of betrayal is never something one person pays alone. The next morning, Olivia voluntarily changed her plea to guilty. In her statement to the court, she tearfully confessed to every detail of the entire affair. "I caught my wife and my brother on camera, not just having an affair, but stealing $200 million from my company. While she played the perfect wife, I played the fool, secretly documenting their every move. I even booked the flights for their elopement, then sabotaged their final deal, sent him to prison, and left her with nothing. Betrayal has a price, and I made sure they paid it with interest."